Welcome to Scan Health Can, the podcast where we explore the crucial role of healthcare supply chain. I'm Dana Trampas, your host. Each episode is a new chapter in the exploration of best practices, innovations, and advancements, ensuring that at the end of the healthcare supply chain, we prioritize the most vital element, human life. And understanding the people behind each link in the healthcare supply chain is crucial, which is why I'm incredibly excited for our guest here today. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, your background, and what motivates you to work in healthcare supply chain?
Hello, my name is Sav DiPasquale. I've been in life sciences for over 25 years, and currently I lead the Canadian Pharmaceutical Distribution Network, which is an organization focused on delivering simple, consolidated, direct, and economical distribution of pharmaceuticals from over 50 manufacturers, representing over 3,500 products or 40% of the Canadian hospital market. And we deliver those medicines on a daily basis to over 1,200 hospitals and institutions across Canada.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a lot to unpack there. Why is it important that we try to consolidate those pieces? What is your role in making sure that everything's consolidated, and what is the impact that it has on healthcare?
Well, the key is to simplify the efforts of all the folks at the front line in terms of managing the supply chain for pharmaceuticals. And if they had to call every single manufacturer, that would take forever and it would be an administrative burden. We simplify all that with kind of one-stop shopping, and we put up to 50 manufacturers' products on one invoice, one shipment, one payment. So we make life very simple by focusing on consolidation, and that reduces costs to get products to their destinations, but also helps the economy because our carbon footprint is smaller.
And I bet the impact on the hospital end of just having that single consolidated, delivery and invoice has to be exceptionally helpful. What is the impact on the healthcare providers by having that?
Well, I think, again, it's one-click access to products that are in high demand. We have an allocation model when drugs are short or going on shortages. We help them manage that equitably and ration supply to the most important patients in need. So we really don't allow hoarding and make sure that everyone has access to the medicines they need. So I think keeping life simple, not creating an administrative burden, and being one click away from the medicines they need or alternate medicines, or being able to call the manufacturer directly and get more supply is really important for the frontline workers.
You mentioned equity, health equity. So what do people need to know about the healthcare supply chain? Why should it be on everyday citizens' radar? Basically, what I'm asking is, why should people care about the healthcare supply chain?
Well, the healthcare supply chain today, certainly in Canada, it's the lifeline for institutions and physicians and others to treat patients, whether in hospital, acute care settings, clinic, and even at home. And we need to keep the supply chain robust and resilient to major outages and major demands. And you've seen with pandemics or epidemics that it creates challenges for people to get access to medicine. It can be very stressful, and it can affect people getting the surgery they need, the care they need, the quality of life that they need. And I think it's important that we all understand Canada plays in a global pond for this supply. And overall, on a Canadian basis, on an annual basis, Canadians consume or purchase over $40 billion of pharmaceutical products. And it's important that we manage that. And there's thousands of people involved in making sure those medicines are stored in the right way, procured in the right way, delivered in the right way, so that they can get to patients in need. So we all need to care about this supply chain, and it was really brought to light with the pandemic on critical drug shortages that exist today, that continue to exist. It was also brought to light with the Tylenol shortage that affected children getting the medication they needed to manage fevers and pain. And I think that's something that, from a developing country, we shouldn't have that happen in this country, and that's why we need to care about the supply chain.
You mentioned the Tylenol shortage. Can you talk a little bit about some twists and turns that you've witnessed in your career about healthcare supply chain that people might not see in the background? I think the healthcare supply chain, we don't really notice it until it's not there, right? That's when everybody's like, I didn't get this or get that. So tell me a little bit about any surprising twists or turns you may have witnessed that our listeners may not know about.
Yeah, well, certainly everyone heard about the Tylenol issue, and we had people out there, even grandparents, trying to source product from the U.S. and everybody scrambling. And that's a surprise in our modern day world. I mean, we purchase, as I said, $40 billion of pharmaceuticals for Canadians on an annual basis and consume that. How could we have this shortage happen? So I think that's a surprise to many people and Canadians that we even have this issue in a developed country. I think during the pandemic, other surprises were, if you had to intubate patients that were severely ill from COVID-19, you needed anesthetics, and they went short in supply. So it's downstream. Things start to happen. And you saw the issue with gloves and ventilators. So I think it's just a ripple effect when a major issue happens and we're not prepared. We can't be prepared for every scenario, but we should be better prepared to withstand a 20-30% spike. And I think that for me was the bell that opened, the bell that was ringing that said, why aren't we better prepared? And how do we get better prepared? And we don't scramble, because it's very stressful when you're scrambling and everyone's trying to call and everyone's trying to take care of their institution and their patients, and it creates hoarding and then inequities, and then further exacerbates the problem. So the amount of effort it takes, and many of the frontline workers, they were ill as well. So I think being better prepared is the aha moment that we need to be able to transcend these issues. And if we're better prepared, hopefully we can do that.
As you mentioned, these crises, they're becoming more and more frequent, right? We've experienced climate change, we've got wars, we have so many things that are happening. So it's becoming more and more frequent of getting these disruptions. So how do we become more resilient? How do we make sure that we're prepared? Do we over-prepare? Like, what is the best practice or strategies? What do you think we can do to make sure that we're better prepared?
Yeah, I think today the model is set up to respond to a crisis in a very reactive way. I think people want to help. They jump in, they dive in head first. Everyone from manufacturers to distributors to Health Canada to multi-jurisdictional, federal, provincial, territorial representatives. Everybody dives in, but that can cause issues, meetings, voicemail, chasing. And it's very reactive. I think if we could identify the critical drugs used on a regular basis, identify a list of critical drugs, can we at least be prepared for alternate supplies for those drugs? Can we have a buffer stock, which would allow us to overcome a shortage or an epidemic and perhaps a pandemic? Give us a chance to overcome the bumps. And I think that takes money, that takes planning, that takes stocking and resources, and a framework where we can make decisions equitably. So if one region in Canada is seeing the epidemic or an outbreak and not in another, we can move stock effortlessly to those regions that need it most. And I think we don't have that today. We don't have a standing group of folks that live and breathe and focus on preparedness. We have everyone focused on response and reactivity. Unfortunately, some folks care about that, but we don't have a standing team whose job and mission is every single day prepare for these scenarios, do some scenario planning, testing, etc. And again, have the teeth, the money, the decision-making power to make things happen, to make decisions that during a crisis would not be reactive and would not exacerbate the problem.
And so are we ready for the future? What is your perspective on our readiness for the future? What do we still need to do? I mean, I know that's a loaded question, but what do we need? How do we make sure that we're advancing and that we're moving forward and that we don't have repeats anytime there's a disruption?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't have all the answers, but I think we have enough.
And that's okay. That's okay.
We have enough smart people in the room that, and it's kind of a watershed moment for us to understand that we've brought all the players together. And how can we build a framework, a model that is less reactive and more future thinking, and has scenario testing built in, and again has the accountability to make decisions, to give us a fighting chance out of the gate. so that we can respond better. And I think a framework like that becomes proactive, not reactive. It requires better supply and demand planning, but it requires us to have in place an organization that can react faster. Speed was everything during the pandemic and epidemic. How can you make decisions faster, better, and be equitable across Canada? It's a big region. And I think having that framework will make a huge difference. And we don't have years to build this framework. We need to move quickly. We need to pilot test it, and learn and have everybody weigh in and learn. But we have to go. We have to move and mobilize quickly to start with something that is a standing committee, that is in effect, that we can point to and say, go to them. They're going to answer the question you have, and they'll be able to respond more effectively. So this framework will drive more collaboration across all stakeholders. It'll be a centralized model, but that can distribute regionally. And it'll be proactive so that it can anticipate spikes. It can anticipate scenarios, certainly for the critical drugs, and then we can expand it to devices, which are critical as well, and supporting equipment like pandemic equipment, et cetera, gloves, masks, et cetera. But I think it's important to do it and mobilize quickly for the critical drugs that we use today that patients rely on in Canada. And I think that's what Canadians expect from us working in this industry.
Like you said, it's shifting from that reactive to proactive approach. So where do you see healthcare supply chain in the next decade? If you had a magic wand and you could wave it and see into the future, where would we be in 10 years? What would be that nirvana?
Well, I think we need to use the data that's more effectively, data analytics, even artificial intelligence. I know it's a buzzword, but it can help us plan better and manage those scenarios. And putting more technology on the consumption data and the demand and supply data and information we have, I think that can give us some learnings and forecast better and be better at responding to future needs. I think working collaboratively across Canada for all the stakeholders is important, but also globally.
Yeah,
I think it has a responsibility. We're in a global supply chain, and we produce a small amount of drugs in this country. The vast majority are produced outside of Canada, so we need to play on the global supply and demand scale. We need to understand this supply chain is global, and it takes time. And Canada gets a certain allotment, and once it's used up, we don't get any more. So we need to just do better forecasting, planning, resiliency testing, and again, be focused on transparency, be focused on equity for these key medicines. And I think a centralized, unified, proactive response will allow us to sleep at night. Canadians want to sleep at night knowing that their supply chain for medicines is in trusted hands, that we make the right decisions, that we are prepared for anything that comes at us. And we may not fully handle something like a pandemic, but we'll be better prepared than we were last time. And each time we will learn, build those learnings in and be better prepared for the next pandemic or epidemic. But I think today having 1,400 drugs on the shortages list is a huge burden on our supply chain. And I want to see a world where we don't have that. We have less than 50 maybe. How do we get there? And that we know that we're prepared and we know who's in charge, and how do we make decisions equitably when there's a pandemic or an epidemic. And we're not there yet, but that's what the future could look like.
You mentioned data analytics, and AI certainly is taking over the world right now. Are there any exciting innovations that we should be on the lookout in supply chain? Anything that's exciting you or making you feel a little cautious? Because no doubt technology plays a huge role in the healthcare supply chain. What's exciting you right now?
Well, I think when we look at the future, and I'm not the only one looking at this, but we see what's coming at us from key manufacturers. I think that the evolution of personalized medicine and therapies. So when you have these unique, what they call vein-to-vein therapies, where you take a sample of your, blood or even the tumor, and then you have to manufacture a patient-specific cocktail or infusion or medicine or therapy, whether that's gene therapy, CAR T therapy, cell therapy. Those are very personalized. And if you lose that therapy as it's in transit from the patient to the manufacturing center back to the patient, you may affect that person's life. And so it really is important that technologically we can track it at every step and keep it in the quality condition, whether it's frozen or whether it's cold chain or whether it's a cytotoxic, whatever, and make sure that its integrity is not affected as it gets from that patient to the manufacturing back to the patient. So the personalized medicine piece is going to put a challenge on the healthcare system because it's about timing. It's about one-to-one. You can't lose it. It's like having an organ on board on we have these organs that go into a cooler and they have to get to the destination, and you just can't afford to lose it. So we need to really be on top of, GPS tracking and end-to-end tracking to make sure that therapy got back to that patient. So I think that's an evolution that's going to put, I guess, another dimension or strain on the system, on top of making sure that the core meds that people use every day get there. So we have to live this world of making sure that we have general therapies that everyone can access, but also these personalized therapies that can be infused, injected at the right time when the patient is ready, because it's their therapy. It was built just for them. So that's kind of an exciting future to help us all manage and get excited about.
Certainly, personalized medicine is something that I'm keeping an eye on as well. So as we look to the future, we talking about 10 years down the road, but as we move along and trek along, how do we measure success? How do we know that what we're doing is working, and how do we recalibrate? So how do we measure success?
Yeah, great question. I think for me, we should never have another Tylenol issue like we had, not the tampering issue, but this recent issue of not having adequate supply for kids, which is just, it's almost unthinkable that we had that situation. We should never have that again. I think we should be more positive going into an epidemic or pandemic because we're prepared. And today, I don't think we are. Today, we know we would scramble like we did last time. And I think we want to get to a position where we're not scrambling. We know exactly what's coming at us, and we're ready. We're way more prepared, and we're resilient. And that's what I think the Scan Health Initiative is about, a responsive supply chain. And I don't think we have that today, but I think the future looks like we're prepared for all key scenarios, and no future outages compromise the health and well-being of Canadians. A world where we have equitable and transparent access across Canada to the supply chain for key medicines. And we're learning about that on a regular basis. And then we have a centralized, unified decision-making process that provides that proactive response when a supply chain event occurs.
I know we use the word resilience quite a lot, a resilient healthcare supply chain. What does that mean to you? What does resilience mean to you?
Resilience means we learn from the opportunity and the challenges in front of us, and that we can withstand any scenario. And we may not fully get there because you don't know what a pandemic brings and what kind of what it's targeting. So you have to almost you're a bit blind until you figure out what the entity is or what's happening with the disease. But the key is that we have pre-planned it, and we know that we can withstand a 20%, 30%, 50% demand on key medicines. Could we be prepared for that? That would be resilient. Resilience means that if the whole world obviously would be chasing those therapies, that we have already prepared ourselves for alternate suppliers. And that would be important, that we're not doing it as we're going along. We already prepared ourselves for those alternate suppliers that could help us get there. And again, it just means to me that Canadians sleep at night knowing that someone's taking care of business, someone's taking care of this supply chain, and not just one person, but there's thousands of people involved on a daily basis, but that we know what the steps are. It's like when you have a disaster, you call in the first team and they call in other people. we know exactly what the steps are. We have a rule book, a game plan that we execute, versus let's get on a call and let's figure out what we do next. So we don't want to be in that situation. We have a playbook, and that would, to me, be resiliency, that we have people that open the playbook and execute the playbook depending on the situation.
Yeah, so that's going from that reactive to proactive strategy. So, Sav, I want to thank you so much for your time today on the Scan Health Can podcast. We hope these insights inspire advancements in how we approach our global healthcare system. If somebody wanted to contact you or reach out to you or learn more about your work, are you on social media? Is there a website that listeners can go check out?
Absolutely. Contact me on LinkedIn, but obviously on cpdn.ca. All our contact information and who we are is there. Happy to help and happy to be part of this journey.
Thank you, Sav. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to share your thoughts and feedback. And until next time, I'm Dana Trampas, your host. Stay tuned to Scan Health Can.